APUS government students, here's your exam for review. So we're focusing obviously on Congress, which is the House and the Senate. Make sure that you recognize Congress by the numbers. Of particular note is a couple of different things that obviously the citizens elect people in both the House and the Senate. That wasn't always the case with the Senate. You can see that change. They were elected by the state legislatures until that changed with the 17th Amendment. Additionally, take a look at the various populations of the state and how that impacts the number of people in the House. 700,000 people roughly per district. So you can do the math there where you move the decimal point, 4.2 over 1 to the right, divide by 7, and that will give you the approximate number of House districts that that state has. You can see the 6 there for that state. The Senate, always 2. I'm just a bill. We looked at this in real brief terms. Just make sure that you recognize that a bill must go through, one bill version must go through each the Senate and the House if it ever has hopes of becoming a law. Committees will break down these bills, look at them, research them, hold hearings, and then vote them back to the floor. If that committee, which it's rare, they only have time to work on a few select number of these each year. If those committees vote them back to the floor, then you will see them work on that bill even further as the body of the whole, the entire floor, so to speak, is looking at that bill. In the House here in the second, we'll see they have lots of rules when it comes to floor work and debate. In the Senate, they have very few rules. We'll then talk briefly about the power of the majority in the House and the power of the minority. And when I say minority, I don't mean like minorities like African Americans or Native Americans. I'm talking about the majority party and their influence upon bills in the House or the Senate. As we move to those debate rules, in the House, much more controlled. Huge power of the majority to be able to control bills, where they go, how they operate, how they're changed. You know, that majority really controls everything when it comes to the House of Representatives. The way the rules of debate and everything is set up in the House, it favors the majority. In the Senate, much less controlled in the Senate, and you see this power of the minority because you have those three things there. Now, unanimous consent, holds, those are just ways in which we can look at small examples in which a small number can hold up a bill. We then looked at the idea of the filibuster, where one senator or a group of senators can then hold up debate on a bill by filibustering or threatening to filibuster that bill to death. Because of these things, specifically the filibuster, that's why it takes 60 votes to pass things in the Senate. Important powers of all of Congress: the power to tax, spend, and borrow, and we talked about how they do those things very, very well when it comes to spending and borrowing. And taxing doesn't seem to, with both Democrats and Republicans, equate to the amount of money that they spend when they're in power. Quickly then, we looked at the necessary and proper clause. Again, there's not going to be much here, so don't spend a ton of time here. But just remembering that Congress has some implied powers that comes from McCulloch versus Maryland. Congressional jobs, oil, oversight of the executive, making sure their money is being well spent, investigation of different companies, different individuals that may impact our country, and then lawmaking. They don't get a lot of that done. It's really, truly a lot more of the O and the I that's happening in Congress these days. Specific powers, the House and the Senate. So double check those. Investigations in the House, And we often too much think of investigations in terms of impeachment and the president. No, they can investigate lots of different things. Revenue bills must start here, just one of those quirks. And then the Senate only powers, all right? Confirmation there, big one, all right? Approval of treaties, we'll talk more about that. There won't be anything in the test really about that. Removal trials, not been too many of those in our country's history. We have never removed a president from office. We've impeached a few, but we've never had the Senate vote out a president. Congressional lingo here. Take a look at your vocab for this. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. As is the representative styles of trustee, delegate, and politico. Lots of stuff here, lots of questions about this lecture 3. So really look in here on lecture 3 and lecture 4 for that matter in terms of what you need to know for this test. We're focusing on the House. Apportionment. Every 10 years, the federal government, counting the people. We're going through it right now. And then they will go through looking at those populations of the state, primarily then probably using that 700,000 or so standard and telling the states, you get 4, you get 6, you get 25, whatever it may be. Baker versus Carr speaks to the idea of the federal government and the states. Hey, you can't have districts that are super imbalanced. That's unfair. That's unfair representation. And that speaks to the one person, one vote standard. Redistricting is this now drawing of those lines. We know they have to be, from Baker versus Carr, about the same in terms of population, but now redistricting gets us into that idea of redrawing these House lines. If they gerrymander those lines, that means they're specifically trying to slice out, carve out districts in the House for the benefit of one group. Historically, it was done for race and ethnicity, to carve out and to discriminate against minority groups. That's been held illegal from Shaw versus Reno. That is illegal. However, we then spent a lot of time looking at partisanship. What happens if a state legislature draws them for the benefit of Democrats or draws them for the benefit of Republicans? We looked at all those different ways in which you can slice and dice these different districts for that reason. What this has created is very few competitive House seats today. They're gerrymandered so bad for Democrats and Republicans that once you get to the general election, the November election, you know who's going to win. If 75% of the district has been gerrymandered for Republicans, the Democrat doesn't stand a chance. These are known as safe seats. All right. One of the things that we then talked about was this sort of beginning of a movement for states to get away with or attempt to stop gerrymandering in their states, taking that power away from the state legislatures, taking it away from politicians, and putting it in the hands of independent councils and panels, like Iowa has done. All right? Now, it's difficult for states, especially state legislatures, to give up power. It's going to take initiatives or huge pushes by the citizens to do that, but we're starting to see that push because gerrymandering is truly not a good thing for Democrats or Republicans or our country, for that matter. This is then showing you kind of that change of how, if you focus in the middle, these are competitive districts. 164 about the time that you were born, now down to about 90, and I would probably say even less than that today. All right? So this has created a very polarized, very partisan House of Representatives that's unwilling to work together more and more. Finally, then, this entitlement crisis. Again, focus on the idea first. Mandatory versus discretionary spending. Mandatory spending, that are things that by law the Congress has to pass out part of our tax dollars to certain things, like Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid. Those are things by law that they must pass that tax money out of our money to those people that qualify for those benefits. The things that we talked about is that these systems are not sustainable in their current form. By roughly 2023, people drawing out, there won't be enough money in there anymore. By 2033, for those people promised certain amounts of money to get that money, unless they tweak or change the system. Raise taxes, raise the retirement age for people to get these things, require people to put more money in. These are problems and issues that we're now going to have to face. Additionally, with Medicare, about 3% coming in. It's been hovering around this $400 billion outlay in terms of what's being paid out. Look at how that is exploding and increasing with the cost of healthcare and with, quite frankly, the number of people that are retiring. We have this huge bubble that's going to break this in terms of the baby boomers. And it's not their fault. It's not like they created this system. It's not like your grandparents did this. This is a way the system was created by law, and there's no easy answers in terms of fixing it. Do you say people get less in Medicare in the future? Nobody wants that. Do we raise taxes to cover these things? That's not very savvy. There's no good answers here, but you have to recognize the issues and the problems with these types of entitlements that we have. And that impacts discretionary spending. That impacts the amount of money that we're going to pay in for our military. If so much of our money is being ate up by these entitlements, that's going to have an impact on our military. That's going to have an impact on our discretionary spending. And that should matter to all of us. Healthcare. We talked about then the issue of healthcare. It's an issue. It's a problem. I think we all see that as a nation. Right? We talked about, my son being born in 2011 in this, Midwestern, Great Plains, healthcare not being super out of control, but $25,000 for a healthy child to be born, it's crazy. It's crazy. So Obamacare was this idea of trying to fix this issue. All right? So Republicans have their way to try and make this better. Democrats have their way to try and make this better. And as we looked at what Obamacare is, and it's been changed since its birth, this hybrid model of private insurance and government insurance. The goal was to decrease prices. All right? Hasn't done that. Additionally, there's these mandates that are controversial. You got to have health insurance or you get taxed. Now, that has been ripped from the law, and that has brought the law back in flux, in addition to these coverage mandates that go against certain people's religious beliefs and their personal beliefs about certain things that should or should not be covered in healthcare. Lots of controversy there. So you hear these ideas of fixing Obamacare, Medicare for all, expansion of health insurance. Who knows? But it should be a very vital thing that you watch as you become a voter and a citizen. Because as you look back here, it ain't cheap for anything. And we got to find a way to make this better and to fix this. So pay attention to what Democrats, Republicans, and people are trying to do with healthcare, because it's going to have a huge impact upon your life. All right? That's it, everyone. Good luck on the exam. See me if you need any